few questions to get us started. What do we mean when we use the term fundraising? So if I say, does your school do fundraising? What do I mean?
Bake sales.
Okay.
Money that comes in that's outside of regular tuition.
Okay, money coming in to the school outside of regular tuition. Probably a definition we probably all agree with. I do want to encourage us, both today and in general though, to be thinking about all of the money that comes into our institution as part of what happens in a given year in fundraising. Tuition, those dollars are funds, right? Raised for your school. They're coming in a particular way and with a particular agreement. But one thing I'd like us to be thinking about, something we do a lot at Emmanuel, is thinking about the whole year and thinking about every time we're either asking someone for money, expecting someone to give us money, right? Their tuition payments, and thinking very broadly about that. So I think that's one overarching idea and question. And we'll, again, pose some of these questions and then talk about the practical realities or tactics that are part of these ideas. So thinking broadly, fundraising goes hand in hand with what at Emmanuel we call advancement. Advancement is everything we're doing to publicly advance the mission of the school. So for Emmanuel, that's social media, all our marketing, speaking with the public. So whether that's the person who calls someone back, whether that's our open houses, and this direct dollar fundraising. So advancement, we think of including all of these aspects, and they need one another, right? They go together. So in your institutions, for those of you that maybe have different folks working on things like social media, marketing, fundraising, is it the same person, different person? I know in many cases it's probably the primary administrator. Do you combine these efforts in terms of the kind of work in your institutions? Is the same person working on social media that's working on, okay, yeah. Okay, something to think about is consolidating these kinds of efforts, whether that's a paid staff member or volunteer. I know we all have different resources. That's what we're talking about, right, our resources. But thinking as broadly, again, about advancement as you can, and thinking about how these different parts of the advancement work go together, I think will be really helpful. How many of you have written down policy about fundraising, social media, marketing? Maybe, not sure. A few, great. Wonderful. Okay. Should have some policy around social media for sure. Marketing. Who on your staff, or which volunteers are responsible for these things? What kind of fundraising do you participate in or not participate in? Okay, your board is going to help you get direction here. How many of you would say that your school has a culture of giving? How many of you describe your schools? Right, a few. And when I say culture of giving, what does that mean in your context? Someone who raised their hand. Culture of giving.
I would say that all the families involved pretty much always say yes to taking some part because there's so few of us that you're just, if anything's going to happen, everyone's going to pitch in or wither or die, it won't happen.
Okay, so this raises a great point about constituents. How many of you would consider your families your primary constituents for raising, of course, your tuition dollars, but dollars beyond tuition? Are your parents your primary source of that additional revenue? Not sure? Yes? Yes? Okay. Who are some of your other constituents? Let's name those people who care about your institution, who want to give your institution dollars. Just shout it out.
Alumni, church members.
Okay, congregation members, parents,
Extended family, grandparents.
grandparents, extended family. Is anyone?
Our largest donor is a guy who just came on vacation several years ago, who lives in Michigan, and sent us a substantial amount of money.
Okay, and what? Great, you're getting
So the
to-
kids took a Latin hymn at church the Sunday
Yep.
he was visiting, and
Okay.
we got one of them.
So you're getting to a great point, one of our other points here. Somehow be connected to your mission, right? So someone who feels connected to your mission outside of your most immediate friends and family.
We have a local doctor who recognizes the value of not only Lutheranism, but also classical education
Okay.
as a primary donor.
Local farm co-op, actually, that we're in a really small town, and they're just happy to see economic activity, and we're thinking of building an addition, and they local businesses, basically. They give us.
So if you haven't identified within your institution these constituents, this is an activity you should do, right? That you should know those individuals that are going to feel connected to your mission. And I think this is where I want to now spend a little bit of time, which is staying true to mission, right? We've talked about this a lot. This is why we're here, right? We feel strongly about classical Lutheran education. We are excited about it. We talk to prospective families about it. We talk to the staff we recruit. We talk to each other. And we are unapologetic about that. This is a good thing. This gets donors, to use the very secular term, right? This gets them really excited. When you have excitement and share your excitement and your joy, they too will share in that, right? So how do we share our excitement and joy? How, as an administrator, do you share your excitement and joy? How, as a classroom teacher, do you share your excitement and joy?
It generally happens through face-to-face interactions.
Great. Okay, so all my talking. Okay, relationships. We're human beings, right? We're embodied creatures. We talked about this. This comes up all the time. We are living in community with one another. Talk to your people, right? Be with your people. So just as we were beginning, was reminded, right, that as we're thinking about fundraising, it's as important to be developing relationships, right? Sharing our story, asking for people to pray for us. So in addition to the way you think about the whole year, how funds are coming into your institution when you're asking people for money, especially parents, your primary constituents, who are both giving you tuition dollars and giving additional dollars. The other thing we calendar at Emmanuel, especially in terms of my time, is all the opportunities for really wonderful face-to-face interactions. Now, of course, I'm every day in carpool, we're seeing parents all the time. But how many opportunities in a year do I have, does our director of advancement have, does our pastor have, whomever the right people are, and there are many, your teachers have, to just be in really wonderful, intimate conversation with parents, with grandparents. So we try to look at a series of all kinds of events. These aren't fundraising events, right? Sometimes we hear the term fundraising. I don't particularly like that term, but where might I have opportunity to really tell the story, to really connect with someone? And it's probably not in the school email newsletter, although there's reason to send a school email newsletter and have it have good information. But it's in those parent socials, those parent coffees. I know many other schools are doing Friday, Friday coffee or a Monday coffee, where you have face-to-face interaction. So as much, especially as administrators and advancement folks, get out from behind your desk. There are a lot of needs, right? But being with people, being with parents, being at your coffee hour at church, and talking with people, telling stories, sharing progress, sharing challenges, and there are different times to share challenges. It's not every time you get together with parents, you're going to unpack a significant challenge. And then, not just talk, but what's the next part? You are a fundraiser. Yes, that's the next part.
Listen.
Right? You want to listen to know what is speaking to your parents. And it's not because what we're going to do, we're going to change, right? The parents says, well, I'd really love it if, you started teaching, computer programming instead of music class. And you'd say, oh, well, I really want to listen. No. But, I mean, you listen politely and then explain why we wouldn't do that, right? But people want to be heard. You want to be heard. So listening is going to be really important. And then asking. So if you were at my earlier session, I had another giveaway. We'll do this at the end. But a great book. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Gerald Panis. Fundraiser, secular, right? We'll have our classical Lutheran lens to look through here. A 15-minute guide to everything board members, volunteers, and staff must know to secure the gift. But what he's getting at here is that you actually have to ask for the gift. And this is primarily focused on face-to-face interactions. This is not about kind of an annual campaign letter or email request. But this is about really developing relationships with particular donors or groups of donors. It could be applied into some small groups as well. And for those of you who don't have advancement or development experience, I think this could be really helpful. So we need to stay missional, right? We need to stay, and that's where we are going to naturally be most excited. So want to be sharing the mission, repeating the mission, sharing it again, listening, having personal and in-person, conversations with parents, grandparents. Many of you, I'm sure, do Grandparents' Day. Probably do your Grandparents' Day. If you can get grandparents on campus, do it. Right? They love their grandchildren. They are so excited they are in a classical Lutheran school. They want to support you. Grandparents, friends of the family, aunts and uncles, anyone, special friend day, right? Make it work for your community, right? How many of you produce any kind of annual report? Okay, a few. Pastor Keitzer, of course. What do you include in your annual report, and who does it go to, Pastor?
Well, our annual report probably isn't exactly what you're referring to, but it primarily goes to the congregation and reports to the congregation all the goings on throughout the year. So it may include a little bit about finance, but it really includes more about highlights of the school year.
Absolutely.
Those kinds of things.
Yeah, and that's what I actually do think is really helpful. We tweak ours a little bit for the congregation, and a little bit for school families. Some, of course, are congregation members. Of course, lots of pictures, high-level activity, some numbers, right? Enrollment, staffing, dollars brought in, high level. Everyone loves pictures, though. Everyone loves to look at pictures. It's the only reason I can still recommend using social media, because everyone loves pictures. They love those smiling faces. Happy kids learning, singing in class. So for your fundraising dollars that you're bringing in outside of tuition, how many of them go to your annual fund, meaning they're like unrestricted dollars? They just go to your bottom line versus a specific project. So general dollars supporting your bottom line. When you raise money, are you raising general dollars, restricted dollars? So for a specific activity? Anyone want to jump in, or you don't know?
I raise as much as I can for the general fund.
Okay, general
I
fund.
keep specific asks if I'm talking to someone and I hear something like we're trying to stock our library.
Right.
And I hear books are important to them, then I'll make a specific ask. But my goal is always to give it to the general fund.
Great. Similar? Okay, that would be a strong recommendation, right? You want to keep your dollars as free as possible. And your general fund, I mean, all church budgets are organized a little bit differently, of course, but the general fund is everything, right? From your teacher's salary, professional development to, you know, lights and toilet paper and all the things that don't seem very interesting to give to, but are really important, right? You need toilet paper in your bathrooms. So, keeping those dollars as free as possible. How many of you, if you raise dollars in a given year, those dollars, well, I guess I'll step back. Are they always spent in the given year they're raised?
No.
Okay. Do they stay allocated for the school?
Yeah.
Okay? So they don't go into a kind of bottomless pit for whatever might be needed for the church and school at the end of the year. They stay with your, okay, great. That's really wonderful because you may have a year, right, where you're raising fewer dollars. Okay, how many of you also raise tuition assistance dollars specifically? Okay, great. And does anyone want to speak to success with one or the other? Are you raising, is it easier to raise tuition assistance dollars? Is that from different people, the same people? Jump in.
Tuition assistance would be easier.
Okay. Why?
Some of the congregations have it budgeted already, but people feel like it goes more directly to what they're wanting to support.
Okay.
From a development standpoint, that's the only thing that they can generally see a return on, is the fact that if they can pay for a student to come, they see the student come and they know that the money went there. And then when the student stays or succeeds, then they feel, then they see the return from there.
Okay. Similar approaches in other institutions? Who feels that the raising of those annual fund or general dollars has as a compelling story as tuition assistance? Are you finding people responding to those requests and asks? Or are you struggling?
I misunderstood the question.
So-
I thought you were saying if I think it's compelling, then I'm like, yes, of course.
No, your donors, the people giving. Are people satisfied with the giving in their communities? There's a lot of people here, so I would think it means probably people are interested in increasing the giving,
I mean,
right?
we're still opening, so we're not opening till the fall of 2023. And right now, I have a very compelling story about what's going on in our particular city that I am finding it not easy. It's never easy, but I'm finding it pretty natural for people to give generally as we have all of these startup costs. I'm anticipating as we open that may slow down. As we're more established, and then it might be more specific asks for things as we go. But, you know, that's just trying to guess as we go along.
Who feels there's untapped giving, I guess, in the community? Maybe that's a clearer way to ask the question. Untapped. Okay, great. Great. Hopefully for all of us. Okay. Amongst yourselves, maybe for the next few minutes, I'd love for there to be some conversation about the actual fundraising efforts. Is this an appeal that comes in the mail or via email? Is this an event? Is it both? Is it passive fundraisers? So by passive fundraisers, box tops for education, dollars back from lamps and uniforms, restaurants, nights? You know, what constitutes the bulk of your activity? Is it a direct appeal to a mass group of people? Is it a direct appeal to a few different individuals? Is it these passive fundraisers, annual auction? Again, I'm sure in many cases it's a combination, but let's talk amongst ourselves about that, what's worked, what hasn't, and maybe where you'd like a little more support or conversation. So 4 minutes on this topic, and then we'll kind of regroup.
Non-established yet with a lot of bars. An appeal to
Where you were noting time and effort versus kind of reward, so to speak, right? Putting in a lot of time for something that brings in a very low dollar amount. Yes, any gift a congregation member or parent would make, we are grateful for. But when we're talking about investing in a program, whether it's script or another passive fundraiser that takes a lot of volunteer time, a lot of work for really low reward, I would encourage you to evaluate that really carefully. So at Emmanuel, we have an annual fund. We communicate that in October, typically. We give everybody a few weeks to settle in. We have a large Oktoberfest in September. People are feeling great about the institution. We're gathering with parent socials starting in October. And then we remind them that tuition dollars do not meet all of our needs. And would you like to give to the annual fund, which, you know, supports the great work happening here, right? Everything from field trips to staff development and everything in between. We'll push that online, and then, you know, mailers for those that we don't communicate with online. And we give them online options. Everybody doing online? Can everyone get to your school online? Great. Can everyone give a recurring gift online every month? Good. If they can't, make sure they do it. Make sure whoever manages your online system has that option to let your donors pay the credit card fees for you. They will do it 9 times out of 10. Right, there's an expense to those things, okay? Give them that option. So we'll focus on that for about 2 months. At Emmanuel, this is just the culture of Emmanuel. Our Parent-Teacher League does a large collection for cash teacher gifts at the end of the calendar year before we go off to Christmas. It's amazing. They typically raise about $15,000 for that. We stop sending annual fund appeals during that time to parents. Okay, so this would be an example of just looking at all the times and occasions you're asking, or someone is asking your parents for money. Now, when school is out, we remind people it's end of the year, right? Calendar year is coming to a close, make those year-end gifts, etc. Okay, can give to the annual fund all year. We have a big concluding auction, but our auction has really moved away from stuff to just general giving, getting together, enjoying one another's company, experiences in the school versus everyone, all the volunteers, of which we're in Alexandria have a hard time getting volunteers. Everybody works, they work long hours. It is not worth the time for volunteers or staff to go to local restaurants and ask, would you donate a $50 gift card? That is not a good payoff for us. It may be in another place. So these are the things you'd have to evaluate. So the most popular item at Emmanuel's auction this year was, well, one was jumping out of an airplane with an Air Force officer. That isn't possible every place. Be creative with these options. Experiences. People love experiences. Going out on the yacht or the boat. Can somebody do this? Our headmaster for the day, right? Come and spend the day with the headmaster. Make it a meaningful experience, right? A headmaster taking a class to the ice cream shop that we can walk to. $1,500 a parent paid for that. It cost me about $100. That's pretty great, okay? So be creative in the ways you're thinking about and just telling people, tonight we're trying to raise X amount of dollars. How many of you set a goal and communicate that goal at the beginning of your fundraising cycle to your constituents, right? So we just celebrated Emmanuel's 150th year. Our goal was raising $150,000. And that was the message all year, 150. Ms. Shorten.
You live in a community that seems really willing and ready to give as much as they can. And in a lot of our more rural communities, sometimes there's not opportunity to get that way, or maybe there's just a different culture too of getting a deal rather than giving it. So what would you recommend for a more rural community?
Well, we want to thank every donor at always, right? And we haven't spent time on that. Every donor gets a letter from you as soon as you can do it, not at the end of the year for their taxes, as soon as you can do it. I know a lot of you are just kind of think every donor at another time gets a handwritten postcard from you with your verse of the year, your hymn of the year, your theme for your school. These should be on your desk, right? And so we want every donor to feel loved and appreciated. Telling your story, being faithful to your mission, being grateful for the gifts you receive. I think being as creative as possible within your circumstances is helpful, right? And that's why this is so personal to each community, right? The trip on the yacht does not work in rural Iowa. I totally understand that. Totally understand that. Working within your means, right? Setting reasonable goals is going to be important. But when you tell your mission, people are going to be motivated to give. They're going to feel generous. They love your students. But I do think time versus reward is important. Pastor.
One suggestion, I served a rural congregation and school in southern Illinois. It seems to me that those communities thrive on community itself, getting together with families, sometimes food. I just heard of one here in Sussex. It's a fairly small community, right in Christensen. They have a great fundraiser that includes the entire community, people, right here, just telling you the story. We had one in southern Illinois that we made apple butter with the old copper apple butter pots, and it brought together intergenerational folks, and they love to make it, they love to sell it to people, the community loves. So I think that you find something in your community that you like, that brings community together. That seems to be the strength of small communities versus like a fight, where it's really, really hard at times to find community like you have in small communities.
Yeah, no, so that gets back to the relationships, right? Being physically present with people. How many of you have continuous enrollment? Meaning someone has to opt out of being enrolled at your school. Okay? This is part of actually good stewardship and good fundraising, because it's going to reduce administrative time in terms of that re-enrollment process. You're a fan, Pastor Paul? It's worked out great.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Right? It means you know what income is coming in every month. You don't have peaks and valleys. This helps as you think about fundraising goals or times of year when your institution may need more regular income coming in. If you have not looked at continuous enrollment, your student management system, if you have one, certainly allows for it.
Do you do that on, does RedWeb have
Yeah.
automatic?
Yes, we use RunWeb and they,
RedWeb,
Yeah,
that's
and we have a fee system associated with it too, so the fee deadlines,
yes,
re-enrollment fee,
Yes.
and then that gets withdrawn if you waited too long. you can leave, but we're keeping your fee. And if you wait all the way until August 1st or August 2nd to pull out, you're paying the first semester's tuition. Last year, we did this for the first time. We collected
Yes.
6 first semester tuitions.
Everyone should have continuous enrollment and the late payment or the late withdrawal payments. I'm sure either of us could share our policies with you. At Emmanuel, if our enrollment is much earlier than some places, so it's like February 1st deadline to withdraw. After April 15th, and that's $1,000. After April 15th, it's $1,500. And for us, after June 15th, full tuition is owed. Unless the board approves forgiveness, which they often do, especially if the withdrawal is a job change, things like that. Right? These are all related policies, right? That are important to think about or consider. Pastor Owen.
Yeah, I have 3 questions. I'll ask one. The total enrollment of our school from pre-K through 7th and 8th grade is about the average attendance on Sunday of our church. And I have felt this past year, my first year at the school, as if I am kind of competing for donations with the church. It's a sort of awkward feeling. No one's making me feel that way, but there's youth do fundraising, and then the youth are also my school kids as well, a lot of them. So have you run into that, or has anyone else run into that, or a way to communicate that I want your money, but for the church to suffer, or the parents to feel like the church and the school, which share a name, are always asking me for money.
Well, this is where it encourages that, whether it's your school board and council or your leadership, to have a complete picture of these things over the course of the year, so that you aren't competing. And we have had to gently say to our parent-teacher league, over time, right? We actually can't ask you to do this, or we're not going to approve this, right? Parents don't have the ability to do these kinds of things on their own. So I guess I'd encourage others to have a better idea, some kind of more global conversation at the beginning of the year to say, how about we look at this
Yeah, and the church,
strategically?
yeah, the church and school aren't competing necessarily with regards to goals.
But you want to be
Mission.
sensitive to these things.
Yeah.
Thanking donors. How do you thank donors?
Letters, phone calls, personal visits.
Okay. And do you do most of that? Do volunteers do that? How do you accomplish that among all of the other things?
I have thanked nobody yet. No, I'm just kidding. I just became the headmaster this month, so I have personally done none of those. But what my predecessor has done, everything I just said.
Okay. So, putting phone calls, yes. Put it on your calendar. Calendar the time to call, whether even if 2 parents who might see in carpool, you can't have the same conversation in carpool you can if you get a call. Right? Notes, letters, right? As much face-to-face as possible. Gerald Canis is great. One of his main points in multiple writings he does on fundraising, of course he's talking about getting face-to-face with someone. But getting the meeting is difficult, and you have to do that over the phone. And he always says, stand. If you're having a difficult conversation, stand. Don't sit, you're a little too comfortable. Stand, you have to be prepared. You have to actually kind of get out what you're calling about. You're a little more inclined to be succinct and not back down. So, fun, practical tip here. We like to give away, and this is a resource issue, the kinds of things that go along with our advancement and branding. These are easy and inexpensive, right? Maybe your kids have drawn postcards. How many of you have kids write letters to donors, congregation members? Yeah, if you don't, please start. Get the list from your church office. Decide when the time is right for that, or if you have email buddies or rather note buddies with certain parishioners and certain students. but you can maybe create these on your own if it's a resource issue or order something like this. Stick those in every one of your thank you letters, right? It's just, it reinforces Emmanuel. Faith. Peace. It says this is important, and we are going to be present when you open your book. Thank your donors. Our recent auction. How many of you saw increased giving during or kind of post-COVID? Yeah, like markedly, pretty significantly. That's
The
Paul.
chapel offering was the biggest.
Okay.
We actually had to stop one of our offerings and then start a new one.
Just to
Spread
the wealth.
Yeah, because I think we took in 3,000 per semester.
Wow.
Um,
Terrific.
Either because people weren't giving at home, maybe to their right, and people who weren't church members. That was one thought I had. Or they're just the kind of people who do that. So you routinely, even this year, $100 every week from the school. We have chapel every day. Offerings just on the first day. But definitely there.
Okay.
Offering is an easy way to see that in our.
Pastor Geezer, you saw increased giving, just general fundraising dollars. And do you attribute that to just, we're so grateful, especially amidst COVID and other schooling? Or what do
We
you?
had a lot of folks that were extremely happy that we were open in person
Yes.
with basically few to no restrictions. Very, very grateful. But we also had an increased need for financial aid. And so that kind of offset that. We need more dollars for financial aid, and we had additional giving.
Yeah, I think many institutions saw that, and this is where your mission, right? We're only entering days where there's a further divide, right, between what we're doing and what other educational institutions are doing, families, schools. So you are the bright light, right? That's why telling the story, being really faithful in your communications is really amazing and excellent. And we'll speak to your donors. We'll speak to your families. And for those it doesn't speak to, that's okay. Right? We're not trying to convince people or change who we are, right? In the same way you think about that with admissions and things like that. So encourage that general giving. I think that's really important as general dollars as you can raise. Again, as much thanks as you can provide, as much as that can be personal, I think is really important. Thinking comprehensively, setting goals, and then communicating that. People like to feel they're part of completing something. Some places write like the thermometer and we're inching closer. I mean, if that works for you, great. If it doesn't, also, that's fine. But communicating those things, being transparent about those goals, what the funds are used for. Happy to show anyone, I brought some other kind of tchotchkes and things that we use in our marketing. I always try to have my a manual mug and carpool and those things. We like to do a lot of giveaways of these kinds of things too. So if you have resources for that, putting your logo in the hands of as many people as possible. It's helpful. Car magnets, a great one to spread the word. Questions, closing thoughts? Pastor Odomio.
One comment, as far as promotional materials go, we have a member of our congregation who runs a marketing company who loves to help churches and schools, and he actually helped significantly to pay to get us all to come here to this conference. So if you want that name, I can get that for you as well. We'll get you a great price.
That's wonderful.
Do you have a short bibliography of recommended texts so we can learn more on our own?
Sure, I'd be happy to send some. I didn't mention this in my introduction, but prior to moving to Alexandria and working for Emmanuel, I did major donor fundraising for the Toledo Museum of Art, not too far from here in Ohio. So I have some other resources. Some are, again, a little more secular, but a lot of principles. Again, this book is really about asking and about just just making the apps. And a really great primer for folks who've not had development training or might feel ill-equipped. So the person who has a birthday closest to today is
July 24.
July 24. Anyone closer than July 24?
Yeah, I have, but I've already got 3 books.
Can't get all my freebies. Okay. And Gerald Candace, 50-minute guide to asking if you're interested. I have it in my card. So, thank you. The best conversation, or the best part of CCLE is conversation, and that's where ideas and other support will bubble up. So, I encourage you to keep having these conversations and sharing all the good information and success you've had. So, thank you for your attention and participation.